So where I want to mostly be concerned with for the purposes of this section is this draw group right here. And I notice inside of this draw group I have line, I have polyline, I have circle, I have arc, I have rectangle, I have looks like ellipse, hatching. Not going to worry too much about hatching in this section. We have a whole section dedicated towards hatching. When I click that little drop down thing here, I notice that I have several buttons. And you may notice, as you move your cursor on, maybe you accidentally clicked in the drawing space, you have some weird stuff going on. If I click again, it goes away. This is basically a selection window. So when you click, notice in CAD you don't need to click and drag. Well, you can click and drag. If you do that, you'll get something, you get kind of like a freehand selection window. If I just single left click and release, my cursor has something that drags with it automatically, and if I single left click and release again, that's basically a selection window. I can go from lower left to, or lower right to upper left to select things, or upper left to lower right. And each of these selections do something different, and as you get into working with CAD some more, you'll quickly learn what each of these selections do. So click and dragging does kind of freehand selecting, and then just single left clicking and releasing just does a regular square select. So anyways, back up here towards the top where we have our draw command. So the first thing that we probably want to do is figure out how to draw a polyline. So we want to always use polyline, and if we look really closely at the button itself, it kind of gives away why you would want to use polyline versus regular line. Because if you notice with a polyline, you can make multiple vertices. So a vertex is basically a point along the line, and what connects the two vertices is what we call an edge. So you can see here we can make multiple lines, and we'll see that here in just a minute. So let me go ahead and click on this button. So I can either left click on this button, or I notice through this help flyout menu I can type P-line. And if I want to know more about this command, maybe it's something that's really complicated, I can press the F1 button on my keyboard. And believe it or not, the help menu in Civil 3D is extremely useful. Instead of taking you towards some sort of search thing or the entire library of the help, it takes you exactly to that command that you had hovered with your mouse, and it takes you to that specific help. So you can see how useful this is. And there's a bunch of other commands, such as P-line gen to regenerate your P-lines if needed. Some other useful things. So if your lines aren't appearing correctly, it gives you some hints here. How to draw lines, directions, all kinds of useful things. So if you're totally new to CAD, I would definitely spend some time reading through this and just becoming familiar about some of the concepts associated with the polyline. So again, we rarely ever use line, we always use polyline. So let's go ahead and draw a polyline while we're here. So I'm just going to click on polyline. I can click on it, or I can type P-line. If I type P-line, it'll show up in the command. I'm going to do it both ways. First way, I'm going to do it just from clicking on this button. And then somewhere here in the drawing space, I'm just going to left click and release. And when I do that, all kinds of information comes flying out here, such as angle and the length of my line. So I'm just going to click somewhere, and once I click somewhere, notice I have kind of a green box, and that's called a snap, and it's a square type snap, so that kind of hints to me that this is snapping to the end point. Now I can click again, and that's one of the things about polyline is I can click many times. If I'm done drawing my polyline, I can just press enter on the keyboard or escape 2 times to get out of the command. So I'm going to just press enter, and that gets me out of the command. So now I'm going to draw another polyline, but this time I'm going to do it using a different way. I'm not going to use the button, I'm going to type in the command. So I'm not in any commands right now, so I'm going to type in P-L-I-N-E and then press enter. And that starts the command for me. So just like before, I can just click somewhere again. And when I'm done, press enter. So I've pretty much drawn pretty close to the same thing, not exactly, using 2 different ways. So let me click polyline again, and I'm just going to pay attention to what it says down here at the command line. It says specify start point, so I'm just learning my Polyline how it works. And once I specify my start point, I can specify a next point, but I have a bunch of options here that allows me to, in the middle of a command, run another command. So if you want to, you can definitely click on these. If you have an older version of Civil 3D, maybe 2013, can't really click on these. You actually have to type in arc or half width or length or undo or width in order to activate these commands. So these are called sub-option menu commands. So if you're in a command and you want to do another command within a command, they're called sub-options. So these are sub-option things that you can choose. And if I want to, I'm just going to press escape to get out of that command. If I want to delete entities on my drawing space, all I have to do again, remember from before, left click and release, and then window in all this stuff, left click again and release, and then I can just press delete on the keyboard. And if I accidentally delete something and I didn't mean to, I can type U and press enter to undo. Another way that we can delete things is we can type E on the keyboard. So E is for erase. And notice as I type in a command, I get a little helper here. So Civil 3D is knowing, okay, she's typed in E, so maybe she wants one of these right here because all of these commands start with E. And notice over here on the right side, there's a lot of commands that start with E. So if you want to learn how to use commands, and a lot of the veteran CAD users use strictly commands only, they don't use any of the buttons. So if you want to become a veteran CAD user, this is a great way to quickly learn what all the commands are. So I have E typed, so I'm going to press enter on my keyboard. And this is another way I can go in here and select. Notice as I roll my cursor, a little X pops up in the corner hinting to me that if I select this, it's going to be an item that will get deleted. So I've got my two objects selected that I want to delete. Now if I press enter, it will delete it. So it's the same thing as using the delete on the keyboard, except you get the option to select things first and then press enter to finish the delete command. And of course I can press U again to undo to get my lines back if I want them back. So as you can imagine, there are many different types of geometries that you can derive from a series of lines such as squares, rectangles, triangles, etc. There are other commands that will allow you to draw square and rectangles more efficiently that are worth exploring on your own. And as I mentioned earlier, Autodesk Help menu is very useful in this regard.